the Quinn Marr Show.
This show is brought to you by Bing Pot Trivia. How many times have you been to a trivia night where it just felt like somebody reading questions? Well, Bing Pot Trivia prides themselves on bringing high-energy, dynamic hosts to every event. The show leans heavily on visual elements. Their questions are designed to make you laugh or roll your eyes, while also challenging your knowledge on pop culture, high school science, culinary arts, and everything in between. Their typical show runs 5 rounds, including a photo round, general knowledge on pop culture, riffs on different game shows, absurd 50-50 questions, and a super sweet music round. Check out bingpottrivia.com today to book your trivia night. Again, that is at bingpottrivia.com. Tell my boy Danny that your friend Quinn sent you. All right, let's get on with the show. My next guest has been part of your TV watching experience for almost 40 years now. You might have seen her in the first role as Ruthie in Follow the Bird, to voicing the original best friend of Clifford the Big Red Dog's Emily Elizabeth, to hanging out with Mr. Dressup, and my personal favorite as she clowned around as Loonette the Clown on a big comfy couch. Of course, there's so much more, and we're going to get into it. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome to the Quinn Marr Show, Alyson Court. Alyson, how's it going?
It's going very well. Thank you, Quinn. Thanks for having me here.
No problem. So first thing I want to get into, of course, is Mr. Dressup. You were just at TIFF for the Mr. Dressup documentary, and I know Mr. Dressup was obviously a huge part of your life. So first I want to get into the doc. So when does it actually officially release?
October 10th. October 10th, it drops on Amazon Prime globally, I believe.
Perfect. Okay, so can you take us like a quick synopsis of the documentary?
It's the story of Ernie Coombs and the impact that this man had in helping with Mr. Dressup become a thing, and the impact that had on our entire country for multiple generations.
I love that.
It's a love story. It's actually a love story.
When I was a kid, because Mr. Dressup would have ended, honestly, I think the year I was born. So, for me, it was always reruns and stuff.
Yes.
And
exactly.
I knew Mr. Dressup before I knew Mr. Rogers. And I know they always, they talk about the similarities between the two of them. But for me, it was Mr. Dressup was the original guy for me, right?
What the documentary helps bring to light is the actual real connection between those two people, Fred Rogers and Ernie Coombs. So it does a really lovely retelling of the fact that those two were friends. And they started out working together on a show in Pennsylvania, I believe, initially. And then they came up to Canada together. And then the Mr. Rogers show actually started on CBC originally, and Ernie was part of that show. And then that contract was done for Fred. Fred wanted to go back to the States and get his own show there. And then the CBC was like, well, what are we going to do? And Fred said, build the show around Ernie. He's amazing.
That's awesome.
So they did.
And that's a really cool person to give you the props to say, hey, this guy's the one you want to build around. Do it.
Yeah. Yeah. They shared a very similar, just love of children, kindness, empathy, the arts, just a gentle nature that, you know what it's like when you watch and you just feel that, and it hits you right here and you feel safe, and this is your warm, comfy place to curl up and watch. And even when my son was born in 2003, and I had old VHS tapes with some of my old episodes. And when he was homesick from school, when he was little, I would put those tapes in, and he would just sit there, and it got him through the day.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was going back and rewatching old episodes, because obviously I haven't seen them in a long time, and it was I don't know if it's his voice, the music, just it's probably just everything. It just gives you a cozy feeling, whether you're 7 or 70. To me, I think it's you just feel comfortable, and he feels like your friend.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, he was, and he never talked down to people, and he wanted to have fun, but it wasn't this pushy in your face, we're going to have fun now. It was this natural, organic flow of okay, sure, let's make up a story as we go, and we'll make some crafts to go along with it. And how mesmerizing was that, just to watch him make those crafts? And it was out of things that you yourself could do. So it was tangible again. It was, he was the nation's grandfather.
I was just going to say that. He was like an extra grandpa to everybody.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So obviously, I'm going to assume before you're on the show, you were watching Mr. Dressup, and I think they did just over 4,000 episodes, which for Canadian TV is insane. So you watching that as a kid, like, we'll get into it, but just like the fact that you're on the show, that had to be like a pinch me feeling, you know?
It absolutely was. And the thing was, I started when I was 11, and I'd already been acting professionally for a year. So I was like, oh, TV, whatever. I'm used to this stuff. No biggie. I mean, I'd already worked with Big Bird.
I mean, how much bigger can you get as a kid?
Big Bird, like, come on, right? It doesn't matter. The first day I showed up on set that morning, there was, like, you don't anticipate it. And it was, the only thing I can compare it to is what it would be like to meet the real Santa Claus. Not a mall Santa Claus, and no disrespect to mall Santa Clauses, who are wonderful for kids to meet, but they're very boisterous. They're like, hey, in your face, come on up, and really, loud and not aggressive, but assertive. Mm-hmm. And he was the opposite of that. It was very like, this is the real deal, warm, inviting, gentle, because he knew the effect he had on people.
Yeah.
So he would make it as comfortable as possible right off the bat.
That's awesome. And like the fact that you just like, me not ever knowing him, but like I could just tell that that fame never went to his head, right?
It never did. No, he thought it was wow. This is right to his last day. He thought he kind of got tickled by the reaction he would get from people.
Yeah.
But it meant a lot to him, because there were those letters and those moments when adult kids would call into shows, or he would go, like, once the show stopped filming, he was still touring and going to schools and community centers, and like he never stopped caring. Mm-hmm. And the interaction with kids, young and old, that he was still getting right up into the last moment, definitely it meant the world to him.
That's amazing. Excuse my ignorance, but what was the reason that the show ended?
Him. I guess people for a few years, and they cover this level really well in the documentary. After his wife died, after Lynn was killed, there were a number of years, 4? I think we continued 3 or 4 years that we continued. Because it was still like, this is what he wanted. And then, but after a while, people started to be like, so have you ever thought about when you might retire? And eventually one day he woke up and he's like, oh, I guess, yeah, maybe I should do that. Maybe it's time, and it was when that moment hit that it was the right time for him.
I just can't believe that he went over 4,000 episodes, and it was only like a little bit before that. Then he was like, oh yeah, I guess I could retire. That is a thing I could do. That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, he loved it so much. He loved the people that he worked with so much. So, you don't want to say goodbye to that.
100%. It's crazy. Yeah. The span of the show minus 2 years was from the year my dad was born to the year I was born.
My
dad was born.
There you go. So when people say, why, what was it about Mr. Dressup? Well, there's a huge factor. The fact that he was allowed to be on the air, not just because, it was like, oh, we got to fill the content, we got to fill the space. It's because it was deserving of being on the air for that long. And that many generations had a chance to be affected by the joy that was Ernie Coombs and Judith Lawrence and, everybody else that was a part of that. Lois and Hank and Don, who all did the music. Like it was it was definitely a family.
Mm-hmm. And I love that you were able to like get that feeling all over again by going to the premiere for the doc. So that's amazing. I'm so excited for it to come out.
Yeah, it will. It'll get you.
Yeah,
It'll get you.
You probably went into it feeling like a kid again, no?
I was so excited. I was nervous because there was like press stuff at the beginning. So, and it was hilarious that like Susan McManus and Jim Parker and Nina Keogh, and we're all there as like legacy cast members, right? Beth Ann was there too. Joey was there, but a bunch of us, and you would think like we're performers or whatnot. We're really like, hi, how's it going? But we were all like hiding in the back rooms, like, you go first. No, you go first. Like pushing each other out the door to do the press.
You've never done it before.
Yeah, because it's just not how we're wired.
Yeah.
So that part was really nerve-wracking. But once we got into the theater and the lights dimmed, and it was definitely a time machine back to being 11 again. It was wonderful.
That's amazing. I love that. I want to go back a little bit. So let's say 11 and before that. So for you growing up in Toronto in like the 70s and 80s, like what was that like for you? Like what was your like home life like? Like was your family into acting, into movies, into TV shows? Like we'll get into it, like how you got originally into it. But like, yeah, what was that like for you?
Well, my parents were always strong supporters of the arts in various ways. Both loved opera, both loved theater, both loved British comedy. So I was reared on Monty Python. In fact, when my mom was 6 months pregnant, my parents went to see the Monty Python troupe down at like near the St. Lawrence Market, and they ended up going to a restaurant afterwards, and the Monty Python troupe was there because they had a fan following, but it hadn't hit like super, super big. This is summer of 1973. So they had these paper placemats. And basically my mom and dad signed the paper placemat. And my mom, they were like, hey, who's going to say no to a cute pregnant woman, right? Mm-hmm. My mom goes waddling over to the table and we're like, we'll give you our autographs if you give us yours. And so they did. They got their autographs on the paper placemat, and they rubbed my mom's belly.
No way.
So I'm like, so there you go. I was like blessed with the Monty Python vibes before I was even born.
Amazing.
And they both they never worked in terms of their careers in the arts. My mom was in insurance. My dad started out in insurance, and then he moved in to become a public servant. Wow. And worked with various divisions of the government. But again, they were always strong supporters of the arts. And my mom was involved in every, like the Glee Club, the theater group, all of that stuff at her work back when companies were kind of like Mad Men, where, the company was your life. Uh-huh. They would have ice cream sociables, all of that stuff. So I had a very strong like family feeling just from my parents' work environments. But my mom was very active in her own social time with these different theater groups. She would be in their theater group, where she would direct their plays and their glee clubs. And then eventually she ended up joining the Canadian Opera Company just as a hobby, to be an extra in the opera productions. And the extras in the opera are called supers. And I think they would get maybe $10 a performance.
Oh my gosh.
If that. Funnily enough, she often was in the dressing room like a co-cast member with Anne Mervish. So Honest Ed, his wife, was also a super with the operas, just because they both loved opera, and it wasn't for the money. It was to they just wanted to be part of it. Yeah. And that's when it was during rehearsals for my mother's production of Carmen, right? Yeah. That I met Lotfi Mansouri. I was I was just about to turn 6 years old, and he asked if I would be the child in Madame Butterfly.
Whoa.
And initially I said no. And then I changed my mind once I went backstage, and I got to experience just how loving and warm and familial everyone was. Even with my mom, who was just like an extra in it, and everyone was on the same level. Everybody loved each other and was super kind. And I'm like, oh, well, this is lovely. I want to be a part of this. It's not at all what I thought. So 6 years old, started on the stage at O'Keefe Center.
That is so
there you
cool.
go.
That's awesome. And I love that, like, it sounds like there was never any like push from your mom to do it. Like, hey, you should be an actress. You should do this. It was like they asked you, you said no, then you saw what it was like. You're like, no, maybe I'll do it. Like that's the best way for it to like become something.
Yeah.
Because if there's always those times, like, if people get pushed into it later in life, they hate it.
You've got to let the child feel comfortable with saying no, so that then they know that it's okay. And then there's no extra pressure riding on it other than their own decision. Yeah.
Right. And you were clearly a very smart 6-year-old. The fact that you walked back your answer because of of your own experience, like you saw stuff, you're like, no, that's really cool. Maybe I do want to be a part of that. Like that's pretty smart for a 6-year-old, I think.
I don't know that it was smart so much as the kindness of the people involved. I think it was just it's lovely. Like if you've ever been backstage for a theater production or a musical or an opera, there's going to be the odd jerk now and then, diva or whatever, but the majority of time it's good, loving people who are just incredible at what they do. But the ego is like, it's not there. They want to put something beautiful into the world for other people.
And if there's going to be anywhere to have ego, I feel like that it would be there. So the fact that there wasn't is amazing.
Yeah. And we really found the bigger the star in the opera world, like Dame Joan Sutherland, my mother. So eventually what happened was, I should say, she was a super, like an extra on the stage or whatnot. And then one day they discovered that she could scream. My mom was a really good screamer, as it turns out. And I believe the first production was for Maureen Forrester in Electra.
Mm-hmm.
So in Electra, Maureen Forrester was playing the mother, and she gets murdered off stage. And of course, you're not going to ask an opera singer to scream like she's, being stabbed on a roller coaster. That's not going to do good things for the vocal cords. So during the initial production rehearsals and with all of the supers, they were like, what are we going to do about the scream or whatnot? And they decided they were going to have, okay, who here wants to try screaming? My mom went first. And everyone in the room just like the blood drained from their face. And it's like, okay, next. And like, no, that's good. We're going with that, right? And even the opening night reviews, I think it was in the Toronto Star, the reviewers started with saying the blood-curdling scream that will curl your toes and turn your hair white. So the whole review started with
amazing. A scream from someone you didn't even see doing it. That's crazy.
Yeah. And so she ended up doing it for a number of operas. Rebecca Kane, when she was in Lulu. She did it for Lucia de Lammermoor, and she did it for Joan Sutherland, Dame Joan Sutherland, who was one of the greatest soprano singers in the world of all time. And it really, like, she was just lovely, the most just gentle, quiet, easygoing woman. And I think, between the two, between the exposure to these phenomenal artists, courtesy of my mom with the opera company, and then the experience with Mr. Dressup, I think those two things have really helped. I don't know, helped or hindered, because I think there's an argument to be made for some people who are incredibly ambitious and do have like a little bit of stronger ego that allows them to kind of just shoot for the top and go and grab that brass ring. That's just not how I'm wired.
No, I mean, that makes sense because of what you experienced and like what you grew up with.
Yeah. So it was, keeping it kind.
Mm-hmm. Number one,
and wanting and understanding that it is not one person. It takes every single person there to make it happen, because I don't know if anybody knows this about employers, but they don't like to pay for things that they don't have to pay for. So take a look around next time you're on a film set or a TV set or wherever you might be. Every single person there probably needs to be there. So therefore, they are an essential part of that production being made. And the people that you're seeing on screen, they couldn't do it without them. So, and the big studio executives couldn't do it without every single person involved. So
I love that. I was in a couple plays and musicals in high school, and the teacher that ran them always said there's no small part, whether that you're on stage or you're off. So I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, it takes everybody there. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there.
Exactly. That's so true. Yeah. And that's amazing. So like I mentioned, your first credited role that I know of is being best friends with Big Bird. No, you played Ruthie in Follow the Bird. So like, how did you go from doing these plays and stuff to being on screen with Big Bird? Like what fill in that blank for me. I was really interested about this.
So I was fortunate enough to go to Claude Watson School for the Arts.
Ooh.
And the junior school, so grade 4 through grade 8. And I auditioned for it and got in for its opening year. It had actually technically been open for 1 year prior to that, but it wasn't the official opening. So when I started there in grade 4, that was the official opening year of Claude Watson. And that changed everything. So being able to go to Claude Watson, get drama training, mime classes, creative dance, jazz, national dance, which, by the way, I think every school, I'm going to go off on a tangent about the importance of arts.
That's okay with me. I agree with you. Go
academia,
ahead.
Like you need both for a whole person, a whole life, for someone to go out and enjoy life and achieve the most that they can achieve. You need education in all of those things. So visual arts, music, it was Orff. You know, most people don't even, I speak to a lot of music teachers nowadays, and they're like, oh, we don't really know about Orff. Oh my goodness. You want the best music training early on to get kids to sight read, to understand rhythm and the basic relationship between musical notes. Orff, 100%. All of these classes, national dance was where we would get a new dance from a new country somewhere around the world, and we'd actually get given facts about their population, the geography, cultural history, things like that, and then we'd learn the dance. And that was a brilliant way to incorporate geopolitical stuff as well as just geography and history, all with an artistic overview, right?
Yeah.
You learn so much better that way. Math and music, they go together. Like it boggles my mind, any school board, any government entity that thinks the way to move a society forward is by cutting the arts in education for kids. And
makes no sense.
You know, watching the documentary of Mr. Dressup, I was like, I wonder what he would think of where we are right now with our society and with our government. And, you know, it's like, maybe that's the rule. How do we put this into our Constitution? You know, what would Mr. Dressup do?
Yeah.
And if it's not something that he would support, or you think that he wouldn't support, maybe don't do it. Like,
so true, actually. Yeah.
Kindness, empathy, understanding,
Creativity.
compassion, creativity, nurturing, a love for creativity, imagination. So putting an importance on those things being taught in school, along with, like, do you remember the breakfast program?
Oh yeah, if like you're like for like the less fortunate kids, they'd get breakfast.
Yeah, like, duh.
Yeah.
Who? What? Like, how void of compassion and empathy and just like decency do you have to be to think that school breakfasts for children is a bad thing? Like, or like that's what we should cut.
Yeah. Is that on the thing anymore?
As far as I know, we don't have the school breakfast anymore.
No
I don't know.
Throughout all of my time, I think it was elementary school, it was a thing. No way.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I think we need to find a way to implement what would Mr. Dressup do.
I love that.
Before anybody makes a decision.
Start running for part of office and get that in there.
Yeah.
Any part of government, you got to get in there and use that tactic.
Yeah. Well, I think his either one of his kids, well, Chris lives over in the UK, but his daughter Kathy, she would be phenomenal in politics.
Oh, yeah.
And then his Ernie's grandkids would also be incredible. Jessica or Liam, anyway, that family it's wonderful. They're so smart and just like drop dead gorgeous. So maybe we'll convince them to get into politics
and then use that line. What would Mr. Dressup do?
Yeah,
I love that. I love that so much. So what I was most surprised, one of the most things I was most surprised about doing research about you was that you were the original voice of Emily Elizabeth in Clifford the Big Red Dog. So like, where did voice acting come from in this? Because you were still young then. So like the fact that you were, I know Clifford wasn't Clifford then like he is now, but just that you were like an integral part of the beginning of that. So can you take me through that?
sure. And I realized I didn't fully answer your question before, but it was going to Claude Watson School for the Arts, where they used to get calls for auditions. So that's first of all where I auditioned for Mr. Dressup. It was through the school.
Oh.
But then I also went on to some other auditions prior to that when I was about 9 years old. And had a really, really 8 and 9 years old. Yeah, grade 4 and grade 5. So I ended up getting an agent through that. And then that's when the TV started. So it was the summer after grade 5 had just finished that I did Follow That Bird. So I'd already done a few commercials. And the first TV I ever did was TVO. I did 2 episodes on a series on TV Ontario called You Can Write Anything.
That's sweet.
And then a bunch of other shows started to happen. Vid Kids, which was way before your time, but should try to find it someplace.
I will. YouTube's the best for that.
Yeah. And then Follow That Bird, and then everything else after that. And so when I was 11, I got a call to go and audition for Ewoks, the cartoon. And I got that job. And Nelvana was still a pretty small animation company. So I started doing Edison Twins episodes and voicing on their cartoons, kind of around the same time. And once you were one of their kids, they like to use the same pool of people. Again, another really strong family vibe at the time. So yeah, Sunny Thrasher, who was on Edison Twins, and then we did a bunch of cartoons together. My Pet Monster. He and I kind of grew up as like brother and sister in a way, because we ended up playing TV brother and sister so much, and they just became like best friends. Yeah. So there was a group of us. Then Turned Off, Now Strong. So we were at school together. We went to Claude Watson together, grade 8. And then we were drama majors together in grade 9 at Earl Haig, and that was not a good experience. We both left the school after that.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, because her and I were both working professionally at that point, so we were missing a lot of school. And then our drama teacher decided to try to make a spectacle of us, and yeah, that was not good. So he ended up, I mean, the whole, like, the vice principal and whatnot, they got kind of ripped a new one by both my mom and Tara's mom. And we both sort of said good riddance and went off and had awesome careers. So, bye.
And this was grade 9?
That was grade 9.
Wow.
Yeah, that was grade 9.
I'm assuming you did some sort of homeschooling?
I did not. I ended up going to Etobicoke School for the Arts.
Oh, okay.
So towards the end of grade 9 at Earl Haig, I ended up auditioning for Etobicoke, switched over there because I was a West End girl anyway.
True.
I grew up in the West End, so it was like, you know what? The only reason I went to Earl Haig was because it was the continuation of Claude Watson. It had the Claude Watson School for the Arts program there. But it was also, it's a big school that had all of these different conflicting programs. They had a gifted program. They had the athletic program, like Seneca athletes, special athletes program. Then there was like just regular old high school, and then the Claude Watson. And the different students, there was a lot of antagonism, I guess, between the different groups of students and the teachers, and I guess financially who's supporting what. Anyway, no.
Fair. I mean, and you mentioned that you had auditioning for the school, and I'm like thinking that's weird, but like, no, duh, it's for the arts. So like, what kind of audition would you have to do to go to a different school?
So you had to choose your major. I chose music theater. That was another reason to switch to Etobicoke School for the Arts, because Earl Haig didn't offer musical theater as a major, but Etobicoke did. And I was like, yeah, that is totally my jam. Like, I don't have to choose between singing, dancing, or acting. I can have all three in one program. Hi. So you choose the major that you want to audition for, and you go in and you do a private audition.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. I got you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I love that. So the last thing on Emily Elizabeth and Clifford, it was never a TV show for you. It was like little movies, correct? Like little videos? It
was like the sing-along video or something like that, and they were home videos. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, got you.
They were home videos.
That's what
and that was done through, again, so Steve Hodgins, who I worked a lot with, he was always a producer for a bunch of stuff that I did through Nelvana. I remember that being with him, so it was that same group of people.
I love that.
Yeah, and then years later, you know that I also voice directed the most recent.
Yes, that was Clues in You, which we'll get into.
Okay.
I saw that and I was like, oh, that's so sweet. That's like she like went back. Obviously, you couldn't be Emily Elizabeth because you would have went down as young, but that's so cool that like you went back to like the Clifford family, I guess you would say.
Well, also I couldn't be Emily Elizabeth because I do not sing like Hannah Levinson sings. Hannah is just like, she's phenomenal.
I love that. That's amazing. Yeah. So there was, going through your IMDb, a few names that popped out at me, like shows, whether it be like a handful of episodes or even like one. Babar, Monster by Mistake, Braceface, Timothy Goes to School, My Dad the Rockstar, 16. Those were all shows I grew up on. So like, did it come to a point where there was like, during your career, was like, hey, want you for an episode of this show, one episode of this show, here's 4 of this one. Is that basically like how it went?
Yeah, that's kind of a standard thing with voice directors. We will, for like one-off episodes, if there's a guest character here, a guest character there, producers will usually ask us to paper cast, which just means, who do you know that would be appropriate for this role? And that's, so yeah, huge part of my career was being paper cast. And so there's a lot of cartoons where I'm like, did I work on that show? Oh yeah, okay. Because it's just like 1 or 2 episodes here and there. So it's hard to keep track sometimes.
Yeah.
but it's a very common thing. We paper cast a lot. But it's also, that's why it's so important to get as much representation in front of casting directors and voice directors as possible. And I'm usually reaching out to agents to be like, who do you have? Who's new? Because you do, like, there will always be the Julie Lemieux and Corey Doran and Devin Mack, those three just coming to mind, who are like super versatile. And I know in a pinch, I can be like, okay, calling him in because I need like 3 different voices or whatever. Or yeah, Julie's just going to like voice every character in this episode for me because she can do that. But you want to make sure that you're opening the door to the new next batch of like awesome go-to people, because you can't, there's no way to break into that until they get in front of you in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So it's really important. I think the reason that in Toronto that we've done so well and maintained such a strong voice industry over the years is because we understand the importance of refreshing that pool. It doesn't mean that you don't cast the tried and true legacy actors. It just means you always have to be giving opportunities to new cast, and not everybody's gonna last. Not everyone is gonna be the right voice. Like there were several shows where I ended up actually being a recast for somebody because the producers were like, we want to go with somebody new. Okay, let's bring in this voice. Oh, she's got a really, really cool voice. Let's go this way. And the person would have an incredible voice, a really cool voice, could do stuff that I can't do. But at the end of the day, they just didn't quite get it.
Right.
And the voice acting thing it wasn't gelling with them. And so then I was brought in to kind of give them what they knew would work.
That's so cool. Yeah. Like I said, like obviously, me knowing you most is as Loonette. So like seeing all these like cartoons that you were a part of, like voicing, I'm like, no way. Like these are all shows I was watching daily as well as Big Comfy Couch. So it's like, it's cool that like you were so much more a part of my childhood than I even knew up until like the other day, last couple of days, like researching for this. So like, no, like that makes this interview that much cooler for me. So I just thought I would throw that part out there.
Well, I'm glad it's cool for you. That's good.
One thing that stuck out to me that I thought was pretty interesting was Elvis meets Nixon. Can we go over that? Because you played Priscilla Presley. So
I did.
Where did this come from, and how did you get the King of Rock and Roll's wife?
I'm pretty sure it was. I'm trying to remember the year. So I know I was living in an apartment on Isabella Street. It's so funny the things that you remember.
It's small, odd things that
yeah, but I remember sitting and I'm watching, and I think Melrose Place was on. Mm-hmm. And Priscilla Presley was on. I think it was Melrose Place. Anyway, she had a semi-regular character, I think. And I looked at her, and she had like this short, sort of red, short hair at the time. And I had my hair that way because I was doing a lot of Loonette appearances in the States at the time. And so I wanted to look very different when I took the hat off. So I had short red hair. And I remember watching her on TV, and I was like, she looks like me. So I actually called my agent. Well, they called me. They were talking about something else. And I was like, hey, I just wanted to put it in your head. If there's ever any call for like, they need someone to play Priscilla Presley, or she needs like a daughter or something, I'm your gal, right? Next thing you know, guess what? There's an audition. And I went to the audition. I remember sitting in the waiting room, and it was Katie Griffin. And Katie's another phenomenal voice actor. But I remember, this is actually the first time I ever met Katie. It was at the live action audition for Elvis Meets Presley. And we were sitting there in the waiting room, and she looked at me, she's like, you look just like her. Oh my gosh. And I'm like, kind of. And Alan Arkush, who directed the film, he told me after the fact, there's a thing that, you know, a lot of American productions would do, which is called padding the file. And they would hold auditions for certain roles in Canada, because at the time there, you know, you had to make best effort to cast it locally and then bring in your US stars, right? And they had fully intended to cast Priscilla with an American actress. So this was a padding the file audition. But then when I walked in, and they were like, okay, well, she looks like her. And then I was funny. So
Now
like, the two of them, so he and the producer was also named Alan, and the two of them kind of looked at each other like, well, okay then, I guess we're casting Toronto for this character. So that's how I got the role.
That's interesting how they just decide before even meeting with anyone, hey, it's going to be someone from the States automatically. Do you know the reason for that?
Yeah, it's because they don't, you know, when people come here and they've never shot here before, or there's sort of a standard thought in Hollywood or New York or wherever that, yeah, you don't want like Canadian actors. Okay, well, it's going to all be like, I don't know, beachcombers or something. So you're just going to want to like go through the motions, make it seem like you audition people and you couldn't actually find the role, and then you can bring in whoever you want. So I think it was just that they weren't familiar with our talent pool.
True. Okay, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
So the one that I am most excited to talk about is Loonette the Clown. And I did hear in other interviews you've done that there was an interesting audition process. So can we get into that? Because I only heard that part, then I stopped because I want to hear it for the first time from you talking to me. So can we get into the audition process?
Absolutely. There were a couple of stages to this. So I was 16 working on a Mr. Dressup episode, and Cheryl Wagner was there puppeteering Annie. That was her character. And in the Mr. Dressup episode, I actually had to read a story to the audience. And during the rehearsal, I remember we did it. Because the way that Mr. Dressup would work, we would do 2 rehearsals and then we'd shoot live to tape. So we did the initial tech rehearsal. And then I remember going into the green room waiting until it was time for the dress rehearsal. And Cheryl comes in, she starts looking at me, and she's like walking around me, circling around me, looking at me up and down. And she starts to tell me about this new show concept that she's putting together and sort of explaining it to me. And I'm half listening, half being like, you're freaking me out. Because just for clarity, Cheryl's daughter, Harmony, was my classmate at Claude Watson.
Oh, no way.
So I'd known Harmony and Cheryl since I was 8 years old. So to me, I was like, why is Harmony's mom looking at me like this? Like, this is really weird. And then by I think it was the dress rehearsal break, after dress rehearsal before we taped, she had brought Karen Vallot in, and Karen Vallot puppeteered Chester on the show. And I think Karen was coming in to shoot the afternoon episode anyway, so she just got there a little bit early. And Cheryl was like, see what I mean? Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, now Cheryl and Karen are both being weird, looking at me. And then by the time we had filmed the episode, Rob Mills, Karen's then fiance, soon to be husband, was brought in. Cheryl had him come down to the set, and that was the first time I'd ever met Rob. And so the 3 of them talked to me about this demo that they were looking to put together for this new preschool show. So that's where the conversation started. it wasn't that long afterwards that we ended up shooting a demo.
Wow.
And I think it was like, it was either at one of their houses or at like a little community church that was really close to their house. But in the basement, they had the couch. So they'd had the couch built for quite a while.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, and we shot a demo there. And at the time, I had long red hair. And I remember the outfit was like a rust-colored overalls and a yellow top. But it was just Molly and me shooting the demo. And then once the show got greenlit by Owl TV, it was Owl. Owl was the big backer, and YTV. And once that got greenlit, they were like, well, now it's a thing. Now we have to have a say in the casting of this lead character. So Cheryl sat me down. She's like, look, we have to go through the audition process because everyone needs to have input now. And I was like, that's fine. And the audition process ended up being a wonderful experience. It was, I think we did it at the church, just at sort of Bloor and Spadina. I think Grindel Kachirka was there, Granny Garbanzo. And she took us through like the movement part of the workshop. And it was very, very physical, very creative movement, and improv. A lot of improv and really sort of pure clowning techniques, which to be honest, I had no knowledge of. Like, fortunately, I had taken mime classes at Claude Watson, so that really helped a lot. And I'm naturally klutzy. Even though I'm a dancer, I'm incredibly klutzy. So there was a lot of stuff there that helped. But each actor, each girl who was there during the audition, we all auditioned together. Oh. So it was sort of like this creative workshop thing. And then we would have to do certain individual things at times, sort of in the group or whatnot. And I guess things were filmed. And then at the end of the day, Owl and YTV signed off on me. Wow. Because I think, and there were other actresses there who I think brought some, different aspects that would be arguably better in different places. But when it was combined with my dance experience, my theater experience, and then professional experience, I guess I was the safe choice to go to. Yeah. Certainly my experience from Mr. Dressup really, really helped.
That's amazing. It was funny because my sister used to watch it with me. She's a couple years older than me. And I was telling her the other day that I was having you on. And I just showed her the picture of you and Molly. I said, yeah, I'm interviewing her. And she said, Molly? I said, no, that wouldn't be a very long conversation. So speaking of the doll that didn't talk, what was that like? Like, I know there was obviously other humans on the show, but like a lot of it was you talking to yourself. So like, what was that like? Was that like a hard process to come up with?
Well, you ask an interesting question because it makes me kind of go into some self-reflection and I'm having a bit of a chicken and egg sort of dilemma right now because I talk to myself a lot.
Oh, okay, so
like,
fair.
All the time. Mm-hmm. I put voice to inanimate objects. I have 3 cats. So they are always answering back. I'm always talking to them. And then I'm always having, I have arguments with myself. I have no doubt that all of my neighbors think I'm really just woo, right? And I guess maybe I am in a way. But I don't know if I did that a lot before Comfy Couch. I mean, we always have internal conversations going on, right? Yeah. But I guess maybe it was more internalized, and now everything just comes out. Every internalized thought, it's no longer internalized; it just comes out. So I think I adapted pretty quickly. I think there wasn't a huge learning curve there, and if we were doing the couch scenes, unless it was one where I was holding Molly and on my own, so she was a doll. Yeah. And for some reason I was talking to her that way. That was very, very rare though. So most of the time she was being puppeteered. And so it was someone. So it's amazing how much sort of feedback and emotion can be conveyed just by the puppeteering. So it always worked. I found Bob always gave me a lot. Bob Stutt, a tremendous amount to work off of.
That's awesome. And that's so important for like a performer like you. Like you need that to make the performance that much better, because there might be times where it is kind of difficult to talk to just think in your head you are talking to a doll. But if you're thinking you're talking to Bob, you're talking to a kid watching, like that obviously is going to help you so much more.
Yeah. So that was always the thing too. Yeah. The way that Cheryl had described it to me for looking at the camera, talking to the camera, it was the kid at home, and it was pick one kid. Don't be like Romper Room where you're trying to look through the cameras, like see all the children or performing to a stage, a theater crowd. It's pick the one kid. So we all know one little child in our lives. Pick that kid. That's who you're talking to.
God.
And then when I would talk to Molly very quickly had Bob's personality. So in my mind, Molly was like a bit of a little like she had sass, she had attitude. She could be a bit of a jerk. I mean, Loonette was always, a bit of a jerk. That was kind of the point. Like we learned the way to go about things by Loonette making mistakes, which is, I find a lot of shows, or most shows nowadays, don't allow that really for your main characters. They always have to be perfect.
I don't remember if I'm making this up, but it's like, I remember an episode where like she either lied. What was her friend's name? The guy on the unicycle?
Major Bedhead?
Yeah, she like lied to him or broke something of his or something.
Yeah, and she lies about it. She's like,
yes,
and he does the lie, pants on fire dance.
Yes.
Scram. Yeah.
I can't believe I remember that. Yeah.
Yep.
So, like things like that. Like, because I remember that because it wasn't a known thing to watch a main character of a kid's show make mistakes. Or
she lied. There was when she got angry, the wrong side of the couch episode. There was the Big Bang Boom where she's like super bossy and making Molly do something that she doesn't want to do, and she has to sing the I'm a Total Bossy Pants song. Like, there was a lot of that, but it wasn't where the whole episode wasn't just about Loonette being a jerk. It was, you could see the emotional journey that kind of got us to this place. You could see the mistakes that were kind of happening along the way, because kids can relate to that, and then it's like, oh yeah, I kind of see what I did. And then you show the importance of kind of taking a step back and acknowledging and then owning it and doing what you can to fix it. But also the importance for, on the other side, those who got hurt or affected by your actions also accepting and moving on, right?
Yeah, true. No, 100%. When you guys were filming the show, like, I don't know if it maybe took a couple of seasons or it was like right off the bat, but like, when did you guys feel the popularity of the show?
So we filmed first season in 1992. It aired in March of 93 in Canada. We hit the air in the US in certain regions. Like, we never hit it, boom. We were never PBS national. It was always the local affiliates would choose to pick up the show. And I believe we started on the air there in 95. It might have been slightly before that, because I'm trying to remember. No, I think it would have been, was it 96? Easter of 1996. It was either 1995 or 1996 that I was at the White House.
Sorry, that's when I was born. Yeah,
okay, thanks for that. Yeah, I'll just go take my steel pills now. I'll be right back. Thank you. I think it would have been Easter of 1996 that I was invited down to the White House by Hillary Clinton to be a guest and to read stories to kids during the Easter egg roll. Because one of her big things was literacy.
Yeah.
Early childhood literacy. So that was a huge honor. So it was, I guess, the year prior to that, in 1995, we started on the air in the US. And I think initially it was like most people didn't really know it. By the time the fall rolled around, I believe it was in Atlanta.
Okay.
Georgia, where it was like all of a sudden things were different. I was doing appearances at the Store of Knowledge at the time. And I was there on behalf of Time Life. So Time Life had books and they did our home videos.
Okay.
And so I was there promoting the books and the home videos. And the hotel that I was staying at was connected to the mall. And I'd done a morning appearance, and then I'd gone to my hotel for, freshen up and have lunch, and then come back. And I stayed in my costume because it was not a big deal. So I was just there on my own, hands in my pockets, kind of skipping through the mall on my way back. And I remember Hope Birchler, who was my handler from Time Life, comes running up to me. She's like, "We can't, okay, so hold on. We gotta just, we gotta go the back way." And I'm like, "What? What do you mean?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm just waiting to find out from store security if there's a way. We're probably going to take you outside the mall and around and come in through the storage way, through the back." I'm like, "Why?" And she's like, "There's a crowd. It's big. It's kind of crazy." And so I'm walking with her and I look over and I see a lot, like the mall looks like packed. I'm like, "Where?" And she's like, "That." And it was everybody that I was saying, "Oh." And I'm like, "Don't worry, I'll see you inside the store. I'll be fine." She's like, "What?" And I take off because I'm 5 feet tall. And so I just cut through the crowd. I'm going under people's arms. Not a problem. Before they even know what just happened, I'm in the store up on the couch. But that was the moment everything changed, because the crowd was like, the store was not ready for it. They had not anticipated those numbers, so they were desperately trying to get stanchions from everywhere else in the mall to wrangle the line and getting more security to come on. And from that point on, every appearance that I did, whether it was Store of Knowledge or Zany Brainy, Noodle Cadoodle, FAO Schwartz, there was a time when I was going around opening all of the new FAO Schwartzes. I was at the grand opening for the one in Las Vegas.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's so cool.
So it was, when it went boom, that was that.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, the one thing I saw was that you appeared on the Rosie O'Donnell show. So how did that come about? Just because things like that, like all those appearances, they said, "Okay, we want you on this show"?
So the Molly doll was just coming out, or had just come out, I guess, that within that year. We were actually doing the live stage touring production of the Big Comfy Couch. So from the fall, winter of 98 into winter of 99, we were doing a production across the States. And it was to promote the tour as well as promote the Molly doll. And the reason that we ended up getting on that show is because Rosie's daughter was a huge fan. She loved watching Couch with her daughter.
That's awesome. And
it was a crazy show because I'm trying to remember everybody that was on. I know that David Hasselhoff, I think, was also on that episode. And somebody else. Was it Martha Stewart?
Oh my God. What a combination.
I don't think it was Martha Stewart. But there were two huge guests before us, and the time kept going over, so it looked like we were just getting bumped and bumped and bumped and bumped. So originally we were supposed to come out. We were going to close out the show. I was supposed to come out, do an interview with Rosie on the couch, and then sing Jump for Joy.
Yeah.
And it basically got down to Rosie coming out and saying, "Hi, Lynette, how are you? We're going to jump for joy." And that's basically like, it got so truncated. And then they like pull out, and, you know, as I'm singing the song, it just starts, it goes to credits or whatnot.
Yeah.
But that was fine. Like we sat, we talked, and she was lovely.
That's so cool. Yeah, I remember coming home from school every day as a kid, and that was my mom's like favorite talk show to watch was Rosie. So when I saw that, she was the first person I told that you were on it, and she thought that was really cool. She made sure that I brought that up because she loved that so much.
Yeah, it was a wild experience, and Rosie O'Donnell was great. She was lovely.
That's awesome.
And I remember that everybody in the audience had got a Molly doll. They were all under everybody's chair.
No way. That's sweet. It's like Oprah before Oprah.
That's
I guess not before
Oprah was still already Oprah.
It was around the same time, but it was that's awesome. Would you rather car or a Molly doll? Molly doll.
Yeah, less maintenance. Less maintenance.
Exactly. Yeah. The last thing I had on Comfy Couch was the clock stretch. So that thing was really popular. So like, did they present that to you right away, saying like, "Hey, like you're gonna have to do this clock and pretend to be a clock kind of thing"?
So no, we had rehearsals before we ever filmed, and again, they were very much movement oriented. So I had one-on-one time with, Grindle was the main choreographer, and it would be Cheryl, Grindle, and me. So for like the Miss Loonette's Dance Academy stuff, we would work out choreography. So it was very collaborative. Mm-hmm. And then same thing with clock rug stretch. We knew that this was going to be a thing. Cheryl had always envisioned this clock rug, and her body would move like the hands of the clock. So we talked about things that made sense, and Grindle was getting to learn what I was physically capable of and things like that. So yeah, the choreography for a clock stretch was very, very collaborative, and it was very based on what I could physically do.
Fair enough,
cool from above, right?
Yeah, 100%. That's like, that is probably the first thing me and I feel like a lot of people around my age think of when they think of Comfy Couch is a clock stretch. 100%.
Yeah, and the 10-second tidy.
And the 10-second tidy. You know how many teachers of mine use that? So many in kindergarten and like the early like grade to 1 to 2 and stuff. They love that. Which, hey, if it works, right?
Absolutely.
And so the last thing I wanted to mention was, we talked about this earlier about being a casting director on Blue's Clues and You, and then Clifford. So obviously there's a huge difference between being in this show and then being a casting director. So how do
it was casting and directing.
Got you. Okay, so how did you get into like that side of things? Because that's obviously completely different than voice acting or acting.
It is. There are a few things that led to that ultimate thing. One, as an actor, I was always very. I think my skill set was about the technicalities of things. Even from an early age, when we would do commercials, there were kids who were like way better dancers or way cuter on camera, like just sparkled, but they weren't always like technically acute, or accurate rather. They would, they didn't really understand what it meant to hit your mark and get your lighting and like continuity and things like that. So I quickly became a go-to for that aspect. And with voice acting, there was a similar thing where, my voice wasn't necessarily the best voice or whatever it might require for that character, but I was technically very good. Mm-hmm. And I was really good at learning my script and understanding the backstory and understand like the nuance for line deliveries. So throughout the course of my voice acting and acting on camera, certainly with like Couch, I started to have like an awareness of how things should be done or what was supposed to be happening at the time. And whenever I would work with directors that hadn't read the script, I guess, and it was very apparent and I knew what was going on, so I'd be in the booth with another actor and the actor would ask a question and I would wait for the voice director to respond. And then they would either come up with the wrong answer or they wouldn't have an answer. So I would turn to the actor and be like, it's this. So here's what's supposed to be going, and here's something that can help it, or whatever. Because there were often a lot of new actors, especially with video games, right? We were with that voicing. And that's where I guess so my ex-husband, Eric Suzuki, was very aware at the time that, okay, here's this actor, but she's very good at directing the other actors. So, okay, let's give that a chance. So I did a lot of directing for him and his company, but I never went public with it. I never solicited work that way, because I'd been warned very early on by a friend, a coworker. Her name's Tracy Moore, and she told me, she took me aside one day, and she was voice directing something. An incredible actor too, great voice actor and theater performer. And I remember her, we were going out for lunch break, and she put her arm around me. She's like, if you're ever thinking of making the move to voice directing, make sure you're for sure want to do it, and don't ever think that you're ever going to act again. And she's like, this industry, it's BS. I don't know why, because there were loads of men who, even to this day, had no problem. They would voice direct, and they would still get cast in things. Like, they were still the go-to. But with women, it was no. How dare she? Well, I'm not going to bring her in on my show anymore because she's competition. Yeah. So Tracy had warned me, and I saw what would happen to her career, and I was like, oh, okay, I don't want to do that. So I put it off for years and years and years and years. And then finally in 2014, a bunch of shows that I thought were going to go as a voice actor, they didn't. I was a single mom with a very smart, but consequently expensive child. Yeah, I was like, I need a job. I have bills. I've got to do this. I don't want to turn to my family to pay my way. So I put out an email to just 3 people saying, hey, I'm finally making that leap, ready to voice direct. So if there's anything that you think I'm a good fit for, let me know. And within 30 minutes, the head of 9 Story emailed back and said, we've been waiting for you to say this. We've got a show for you. We'll touch base in September.
Wow.
And that was that. And I haven't looked back.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I love that. And like I said earlier, well, not even earlier, sorry. You are literally a Swiss Army knife. Almost every part of the industry that, like, in that little, like, bubble you've done, like, the big components. That's amazing. Good for you, because that's awesome. The fact that you still did it even after your friend said, like, I don't know, and you're still doing both. You've done it. You're doing them all. No,
I am. But the best way, like, when it comes to me actually voice acting or acting, it I have to pick my moments, and a lot of times it's now doing stuff that I'm producing, because the stuff out there, either the rules are just like, oh, no more of that. Thanks. I'm beyond that. Not beyond that in terms of I'm too good for that. I mean that I think my, age and everything else, it's like, it's just not suitable anymore. Or it's like, I'm not on people's radar anymore because they're like, well, she's voice directing now. That doesn't make sense. Yeah. So it has become that thing. But I'm lucky that I have, there are companies that I have a really great friendship with that they're happy to be like, yeah, we're not interested in anybody else. We wrote this for you. We want you. Let's do this. So
I love that. Exactly. Yeah. So that's amazing. It's the friendships along the way that really end up helping a lot, playing a big part. Right. So
yeah,
that's amazing.
Collect good people.
I've taken so much of your time and I really appreciate it. So thank you so much for coming on here.
Thank you.
You were a part of the documentary, obviously. So if you want to plug it again quickly before I let you go.
Mr. Dressup, The Magic of Make-Believe, dropping on Amazon Prime October 10th worldwide. Watch it. It will make your heart sing.
I'm so excited for it. So I'll definitely be watching it. So yeah, again, Alyson, thank you very much.
Thank you, Quinn.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and I will talk to you
Likewise.
later.
Okay.
Bye.
Take care.
And that was the Quinn Marr Show.